So in this video, I'm going to discuss Adam Chebot Goldman, aka MisterLengis's hatred of Arab people. So in order to discuss that, I first need to establish that Chebot, aka MisterLengis, is a Jewish supremacist and a Zionist. So here we can see tweets that it made that are virtue signaling that it has clear allegiance to a foreign country, a racist apartheid country, which is, of course, Israel. So it's saying here, I stand with Israel, and puts the Israeli flag there. And then up here, it says, it's talking about Jewish specific diseases such as Tay-Sachs and why Jewish ancestry can be traced via genealogy tests. So what the hell is it talking about there? Well, I'll get back to that in a second. Let's look at some other tweets that Chebot made. So here we see that Chebot is once again saying some pretty disgusting racist things about the most progressive and supportive of minority rights people in Congress. So this is the squad. And these people, rightfully, acting morally, voted against this ridiculous bill that Congress tried to, that Congress, like, it was like a referendum that's that said that Israel is not an apartheid state and is not racist. And I'll quote some guy on Twitter and say that if you have to pass a referendum, which is basically just saying, we're going to say this with no, it's not true, it's objectively untrue, but we're going to just say it anyway because we're idiots. That if you need to say that a country is not racist and not an apartheid state, then that proves that the country is racist and an apartheid state. But of course, Chebot, being the white Jewish supremacist that it is, it's a very important distinction. It's a white Jewish supremacist. Calls the most progressive and egalitarian members of Congress grotesque. Let's look at something else. So here is a list of some of the accounts that Chebot is following. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. That's not true. But more interesting to me is what's at the bottom here. Israel Defense Forces. Okay, so clearly it is highly supportive of the military forces of this racist apartheid state. Okay, so we have here a clear indication that of what Chebot's politics are, and this gives great insight into its motivations. Now I'm going to explain a little bit more about the history of this racist, diseased individual, and that's putting it nicely. So Chebot hates Arab people. Okay. Now, the reason why Chebot hates Arab people actually can be traced back to when it was in high school. And it was bullied by some people in high school that found Chebot to be a easy target. And if you've ever seen Chebot, or even worse, heard it speak, it looks like a deformed girl, and it speaks as if it has its nuts stuck in a vise. Maybe a duck bit its nuts off. But there's something wrong with its voice. It speaks like this. Like it's a very, very bizarre sounding uh, thing. That's putting it nicely again. Um, so clearly, when it was going to high school, it was an easy target, and it was also a midget. So it got beat up quite often by some bullies in high school, and apparently, some of these bullies, not all of them, but some of them, were Arab people and South Asian people, and that fermented kind of the race politics that would be ingrained in Chebot's mind for the rest of its miserable life. Um, there's more. So, allegedly, and this is something that Zax actually told me. So, Zax was a supporter of mine. He passed away, unfortunately. Um, and Chebot mourned Zax's death by harassing his family on Facebook. No joke. Okay, I made a video about this. Check it out on my channel. I'll put a link to it in the description. Um, and then, by the way, just to remind you, Chebot went to Zax's Facebook and then downloaded photographs of children from his family and then posted them online. It made a video montage of the children from Zax's family as a way to intimidate and harass Zax and his family. And after Zax passed away, Chebot harassed his family, his mourning family. You know, what a disgusting piece of shit. But I digress. Zax once told me that apparently Chebot was allegedly sexually molested by a doctor who apparently might have been Arab. I don't know of the veracity of this story. This is just something that Zax told me. Um, but apparently that's what it alleges. It was sexually molested by a doctor. I don't know who this doctor is, and I guess he might have been Arab. So now you kind of get a little bit more about why Chebot is harassing me. So even though I was not responsible for any of these things that happened to Chebot in high school or this alleged sexual molestation, it can't let go of the past and instead generalizes an entire group of people for the actions of individuals. Okay? Dumb people do this. This is why racism is so pernicious and so stupid. Okay? Because you're blaming people who had nothing to do with your torment. Okay? There's others. There's other things that Zax told me too. Apparently, a girl that Chebot had a crush on, uh, like spurned Chebot for a South Asian guy. Again, I don't know if that part is true. The only thing I can really uh, verify for myself is the bullying stuff because it made a video a long, long time ago talking about this stuff. So that's coming out of its own fucking mouth, its own uh, hormonal imbalanced mouth. So yeah, like these kinds of things that happen early on can set the identity politics for a person for life. And Chebot is too dumb to understand that. So it adheres to this Jewish identity politics here. Um, so yeah, that's the reason why. That's a major motivating factor for why it harasses me, because I'm South Asian, and that combined with the fact that I dared to critique Duke Nukem Forever, and yes, it is that mentally unwell that it is going to harass someone for many, many years over slights from, bullying from high school from people that weren't me, and a video game. Anyway, let's move on. So we've established its motivations for why it is so hateful against Arabs and South Asian people. But let's look at some of the bullshit pseudoscience that it's trying to propagate as justification for its Jewish identity politics. So here it's saying, then why are there Jewish-specific diseases such as Tay-Sachs, and why can Jewish ancestry be traced via genealogy tests? So the thing that this imbecile does not understand is that Tay-Sachs is not a racial trait, because not all Jews have Tay-Sachs. But there are people who are not Jews who can get Tay-Sachs. It turns out that Tay-Sachs is just a genetic disorder that usually happens in small, tight-knit communities where there's lots of inbreeding. I'm just being honest. Like, it's not something that is unique to Jewish communities, which is, by the way, too broad of a thing. What is a Jewish community? What is Jewish people? There's no such thing, because the word Jewish refers to a very broad group of people that come from diverse ethnic backgrounds. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And in fact, I'm going to have to make some separate videos which really encapsulate some of these concepts. Misinformed, stupid, racist, Jewish supremacists like Chebot, they don't understand. Jewish ancestry can be traced via genealogy tests. Yeah, and also you can find that if you trace my ancestry, you can see that my grandfather is related to me. So what? That doesn't mean that me, my parents, and my grandfather are a separate ethnicity. That's complete nonsense. Okay? Tracing something, being able to trace something via genealogy does not prove ethnicity or race. And in this context, ethnicity is nothing more than a relabeling of race. So what Chebot is doing is just advancing debunked race pseudoscience masquerading under a different label, which is in this case called ethnicity. That is it. It's just a relabeling of race being relabeled as ethnicity. So let's see. Let's move on here. So let me just reiterate that one more time here. So it's incorrect when it's saying there are Jewish specific diseases. There is no such thing. Jews do not suffer from any unique disease. Okay, and if you think about it, that makes sense. Tay-Sachs actually involves child mortality. Okay, if all Jews had Tay-Sachs, they'd go extinct. Okay, and when I say Jews, I'm using it in the context of what it's talking about, which is white Jews, which I'll get into that later. Yeah, it involves it has a high incidence of child mortality, so that's nonsense. Obviously, not all Jews possess Tay-Sachs. Um, and like I said, there are other groups that are not Jewish that can have Tay-Sachs. Okay, so let's take a look at another dumb thing here made by the dumbass. Okay. So here someone says, why do you think it's wrong to critique a religion and the ethno-state that all its followers claimed lineage from? Honest question. So Chebot responds and says, so the Jews of today are imposters? Do you subscribe to the Khazar theory? Okay, I got news for you, Chebot, the Jewish supremacist. Jewish is not an ethnicity. So oftentimes Zionists try to advance this falsity that there is a such thing as a Jewish people, or that Jewish is an ethnicity. And the reason why this is so problematic is because it treats Jews as a singular thing, as a monolith that can be treated as a collective, and it's not. Okay, it is not. It is not an ethnicity. Jews or Jewish people come from a very diverse set of different ethnicities, not the least of which are actually Arab people, the very people that Chebot and many other Zionists hate. Often, like, I see this so much. Anytime you try to engage these racist Zionists, um, like the venom, the racism towards Arabs is immediate, and it's very blatant. And then I just simply point out this. So it turns out that Arabs were Jews for hundreds of years, maybe even longer than that, before a single white person ever was a Jew. Okay? Anyone can be Jewish. Anyone. Arabs were Jews long before any white person ever was a Jew. So you may have heard of King Herod. King Herod was an ancient Jewish king. And as you can see here where I highlighted it, King Herod was an Arab. And he was an Arab on both sides of his family. Both his mother and his father were Arab. And every time I point this out to racist Zionist Jews, they get angry. And what do they do when they get angry? They call you anti-Semitic, which is what Chebot does over and over and over and over again. So that's why Chebot is a woke dullard. Now, the word anti-Semitism is a very interesting thing to study. In fact, I'm going to make a video about where this word even comes from in the first place, because there's very pernicious aspects associated with that specific word. Because the word Semitism is not actually a thing. There's no such religion as Semitism. So that's already very strange that they use a strange, bizarre word to describe racism against Jews. Why did they do that? That's something to think about until I make my video about it. But long story short, white Jews are not actually Semitic people. They never were. White Jews are not Semitic people. Chebot is not a Semitic person. Okay? It's actually a German. Okay? That's what it actually is. It's a German. But since Chebot is a woke idiot that cannot actually argue and has no education, remember, it never graduated from high school, it never went to college, let alone has a degree. It's a loser. It lives in public housing and lives off of welfare. Because that's what supremacists do. Okay, that's the great irony. Supremacists, whether they are white supremacists or Jewish supremacists, are always inferior people. They have to be proud of them being white or them being Jewish. Which, by the way, here's the plot twist. Chebot's not actually Jewish. It's an atheist. But it thinks it is. Because it's a dullard that subscribes to Nazi ideology. This is Nazi thinking. That being Jewish is an ethnicity, an indelible trait that you can't renounce. The people who believe that were Nazis. Unsurprising that Chebot's German, right? But since Chebot is a woke dullard that cannot engage a point, the only thing it can do is just accuse everyone that hurts its feelings with facts of being anti Semitic. And that's what all these Zionists do. They always accuse everyone who criticizes them, who hurts their feelings with facts, as anti Semitic because they're too stupid to think of a cogent argument. So what do? They fall back on, hey, when all else fails, call them anti Semitic. And if that fails, invoke the Holocaust, which Chebot was never in, but constantly makes vague, unproven assertions about having countless family members that were in the Holocaust, which of course it can never verify, but it doesn't even matter because it is appropriating the victimization of other people to then make believe that it is a victim when it is not. It was never in the Holocaust, but it is appropriating the suffering of other people to make believe that it is a victim. No, Chebot is a victim of itself, nothing else. So here we have the clear disproof. Anyone can be Arab. Again, I'll make a more thorough video about the nonsense of Jewish being an ethnicity in another video. But long story short, there are black Jews, there are Indian Jews, there are Chinese Jews, and like I said, there are Arab Jews. Okay? And they are all just as Jewish as any white Jew is. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Okay? Being white is not a ethnic characteristic of being Jewish because there are no ethnic characteristics of being Jewish. There are none. Okay, that's a relabeling of race. It's wrong. It's pseudoscience. Now, let's see. Okay. All right, so the other thing I wanted to touch on was it's saying that the Jews of today are imposters. Well, what the hell does that even mean? So it's clearly implying that uh, some kind of blood relation to ancient Israelites. And this is the thing that Zionists are so obsessed over, that Jews, quote unquote Jews, who the hell are they talking about when they say Jews, by the way? Are they talking about black Jews, Indian Jews, Chinese Jews, Arab Jews? No, they're talking about white Jews. They don't say that overtly, but they imply it. They're talking about white Jews. So the Jews of today are imposters. So what it's implying here is that it is descended from ancient Israelites. So this is the complete bullshitty nonsense that they propagate constantly. I got bad news for you. Ancient Israelites were not Jews. Let's make this a little smaller here so I can get the whole thing in here. All right. So, ancient Israelites were not Jewish, and it needs to be said that Judaism did not even exist back then. Judaism did not even exist back then. There was no such thing as a Jew back then. Okay? But not only were they not Jewish, they weren't even monotheistic. And they weren't white. That's for damn sure. Uh, yeah, during the time of King Herod, which, by the way, was way, way after the existence of ancient Israelites. But even during the time of King Herod, there were no white Jews. They didn't exist back then. Again, I'll go into more detail about this in another video. But here you can see that Israelites were not Jewish. So it's calling this Yahwism, but this is not actually the name of their religion. It's very likely that Israelites did not actually have a name for their religion, but you can see that their gods and goddesses just included a lot of different gods: Baal, Shamash, Yarik, Mot, Astarte. Um, Now you might be thinking, well, the name of their supreme god, Yahweh, well, that proves there's a connection to Judaism there, but not really. So this goes to the tetragrammation, which I'll talk about more in depth when I make that video. But long story short, Yahweh is not actually likely to be how you are supposed to pronounce the name of their supreme god. That's not even how it's pronounced. So yeah, ancient Israelites were not even Jews. Okay, so no, I'm sorry, but no, Jews are not descended from ancient Israelites. None of them are. They're all converts. It turns out Judaism is just actually a fork of another older religion called Samaritanism, which there are less than 1,000 Samaritans left. Most of them live in Israel, and they consider Judaism to be a corruption of their religion. So that's all it is. Judaism is not the one original religion. There are older religions, and Judaism is just a fork of another older religion called Samaritanism. That's it. All Jews are converts, whether they're white Jews or black Jews or even Chinese Jews. And yes, there are Chinese Jews, not many of them, but there are. Again, another thing that is worth a video of its own. Now, the final thing that I want to talk about is Judge Judy. So what Chebot loves to do, like Chebot has a hard on for anyone that's Ashkenazi Jewish, white Jewish, and it loves Judge Judy. And Judge Judy is actually a eugenicist. She's a racist. So basically, if you actually looked at any of the interviews that Judge Judy has done, she actually does believe that there's some people who should not breed, and that she actually believes that some people need to have licenses before they can have children. Yeah, this is Nazi shit. Okay, you're seeing a pattern here in that Zionist thinking and this kind of obsession with Jewish identity politics has significant overlap with Nazi ideology. Okay. Uh, Judge Judy enjoyed white privilege her whole life. Um, no one knew that she was even Jewish when she was studying law and things like that, because most people don't even know what a Jew is. Okay, really, the only people who know what Jews are either the people who are anti-Jewish or are the people who are engaging in this kind of discussion and actually edify themselves on the subject. That's it. Um, but like I said, there are no physical traits associated with being Jewish. So white Jews are just white. So she enjoyed white privilege during her formative years, and she thinks that since she was able to make it as a judge, despite being Jewish, quote unquote, then that means that everyone has the same exact opportunity that she did. No, no, that's a lie. She's white, just like Chebot is, and they enjoy white privilege. That's it. They gain those advantages that are associated with that privilege. No one knows that they're Jewish unless they say so. It's not a trait. There's no Jew gene. Again, that's something for another video. But Judge Judy would routinely look down and berate non-white people, and especially black people, for not being as successful as she is, despite the fact that she had advantages in life due to being white. And her inability to understand how non-white people are disadvantaged demonstrates her racism. And this is the subject of Chebot's admiration. So, this person, and I'm probably going to get her name wrong, Illuminati, made a great video exposing Judge Judy and her racist proclivities. So I'll post a link to that in the description as well. So you should definitely check that out. So that's a summary of some of the more pernicious aspects of Chebot, aka MisterLengis's racist hatred towards Arab and South Asian people. I'll be talking more in depth about some of these subjects covered in this video at a later time.